Hello, family. Angela Cage here with Cage Wellness Collaboration. And this is part three of the Trigger series. In part one of the Trigger series, we talked about the importance of identifying your triggers. In part two, we discussed how to identify your triggers. Here in part three, we're going to discuss ways that you can address your triggers. So, again, in part two, we talked about how to identify your triggers, and there was a long one, um, but there were multiple ways for you to identify your triggers. And really, once you start to do the work to identify your triggers, it's going to be very, very important for you to write those triggers down so that you can easily recognize them when you are triggered, because it's the times that you are triggered when you need to create a plan for addressing the triggers. And really, the plan that you have for addressing your triggers is really just going to be coping skills. Now, everybody is different, just like what triggers me may not trigger you, and what works for me to address my triggers or the coping skills that I engage to address my triggers, those may not be the same coping skills that work for you. So, we're going to talk about a few different coping skills, but really it's going to be up to you to determine what coping skills, number one, work for you, and for you to create that plan and know which one of the coping skills. So you may have a few different coping skills, like taking a deep breath. That's a coping skill. So you may find that when you experience that you're triggered, whatever that trigger is, you may take a deep breath. Just close your eyes, breathe in, and then exhale. Let that out. And you may find that that is a way for you to mitigate a certain trigger. But then that same technique, that breathing technique, you may find that that doesn't work for another trigger, because that trigger takes you to a whole nother level. So taking that deep breath in, that ain't doing nothing for that trigger, because you still feel all of that emotion. So you really want to not only identify the triggers that you have and the coping skills, but you need to find out, connect which coping skill is going to work for which trigger so that you can manage them effectively. And once you figure out what the coping skills are, like I said before, I like to write things down, and I have a notes app on my phone where I write things down, because when you're in the heat of the moment and when you're initially doing the work to utilize those coping skills and really enact those coping skills and start practicing that, you may not remember. So you may need to go quickly to your notes or wherever you have your stuff at and run through, the five or six coping skills that you think you want to uh, try or that work for you. And really, it's trial and error. So you can really decide and try out some coping skills to see what is going to help you in the triggered situation. So the first coping skill that we're going to talk about and that we did talk about is the breathing. And then there's deep breathing. So taking a few deep breaths, just in through your nose and out through your mouth, that can lower your blood pressure, that can decrease a negative emotion. So you can try that to see if that works for you in a triggered situation. If you have the ability to step away from the situation, stepping away, taking a break from the situation, that can be a coping skill. When I find that I am triggered at work, what I do is I get up and I go take a walk. When I work from home, I might grab Zay Zay and take him out for a walk. But on some of my triggers, taking a walk does help me. So that may be something that you want to try, or some other form of exercise. If you have the time to, get in a workout, that may be a way for you to manage a trigger. You may decide that meditation is best for you for you to just get centered, go to your quiet place, just take that moment. And for some people, it's not meditation. For some people, it's prayer. So if you're triggered, you may need to go in prayer. If you find that going in prayer and getting connected with your Most High is what helps you manage your trigger, that is what you want to do. That is what you may want to do. I'm not telling you anything to do. It's up for you. It's up to you to figure out which coping skill is going to work best for you and which trigger it works best with. Another example of a coping skill that you may want to try is building a network. So on the YouTube channel, I did the value of a nurturing village. I think that's the title of it, but really it talked about your village, your team, and really that's your support system. So tapping into your support system may be a way for you to manage that trigger. I know that I have someone that I'm very connected to at work. I call this person my work bestie. And when I'm triggered and I'm feel it just rising and I'm escalating to 10, I can reach out to this person and I can vent. Another coping skill for me, and this works for me, I like to cuss. I don't generally cuss in these messages, but I am a cusser. Some of my family might be surprised to hear that, but I'm sure they've heard a few expletives come out of my mouth. But for me, um, it's not necessarily just the act of cussing, but really it's a vent, it's a release for me. And I have this person, my work bestie, that I can call and I can just lay out a string of expletives about what has triggered me. And once I get that out, it's a release, so I feel better. So I do tap in to that support system. So those are two coping skills that I use together. I may string together some expletives on my own and can get that out. But really, reaching out to someone in my village that's a part of my support network, that is another way that I can cope. And you can try that for yourself. For some people, drinking some tea just gives them that calming effect. That might be something that you want to try. When you're triggered, um, thinking about things like redirecting your thoughts may be a way for you to cope with it. So you might focus on something that you're grateful for. Another thing that you might want to do is to journal. Sometimes writing out what happens, and maybe not necessarily journaling about the experience, but by all means, you definitely could, but just journaling, period. That may be something that you want to try. Another thing that you may want to try as far as a coping skill is listening to music. And really, these coping skills is whatever can immediately bring you out of that negative space. That's really what the coping skill is. And there's millions of them, and we're all different. No one on this earth has the same fingerprint. So no, there's not going to be any two people that are going to have the exact same set of coping skills that works for them. But really, and it's trial and error. So if you don't know what coping skills work best for you, then try some. And if there's plenty out there, so if nothing that I've gone over within this message really resonates with you, then go out there and do some research. Google coping skills, but just try it. So when you've done the work and you've identified some triggers, so as soon as you know that you're being triggered, tap into one of those coping skills and see how that works for you. Because the goal really is to not allow whatever that triggering situation, person, whatever it is, not to allow them to control you. So you are taking charge of your emotions by using those coping skills. So you know that I want you all to win. And part of winning is being able to regulate your emotions, knowing when you're triggered, and tapping in and utilizing those coping skills to bring you back to a place where you can continue and keep moving. I hope you all make it a great day. And again, if you want to move forward and see what the last part of this series, part 4, is about, go ahead and head over to the YouTube channel. All 4 parts are listed there. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and please share. If any of this information is helpful to you, share it with someone because you want others in your village to be well and get the information that has helped you. So go ahead and share it. Make it a great day. I love you all always.